Yogyakarta terkenal dengan keindahan alamnya, juga dikenal sebagai kota budaya dan kota wisata. Yogyakarta juga dikenal sebagai kota pelajar. Lebih dari 100 perguruan tinggi ada di Yogyakarta. STUDIUM Yogyakarta merupakan perguruan tinggi swasta yang didirikan oleh Yayasan Pendidikan Kader Perkebunan Yogyakarta pada 10 Desember 1958. STUDIUM memiliki jenjang pendidikan S1 dan S2 yang diselenggarakan di kampus Maguwo Harjo dan kampus Papringan. Kerjasama dengan berbagai pihak baik pemerintah, perusahaan, lembaga penelitian, maupun perguruan tinggi dalam dan luar negeri juga telah dilakukan. STUDIUM Edu Agroturism merupakan kebun praktek dan penelitian yang terletak di Bawen, Jawa Tengah yang dipergunakan untuk pendidikan lapangan mahasiswa. Geraha STUDIUM merupakan fasilitas untuk pertemuan, pameran, dan kegiatan olahraga yang dapat menampung hingga 2.000 orang. Audioteater STUDIUM merupakan fasilitas untuk tempat pertemuan dengan kapasitas yang lebih kecil. STUDIUM Yogyakarta dikenal sebagai perguruan tinggi pencetak sumber daya manusia yang handal dan siap kerja. STUDIUM konsisten dan fokus menjadi perguruan tinggi yang unggul di bidang perkebunan dan kehutanan. STUDIUM menjalin kemitraan dengan dunia industri dalam hal penyesuaian kurikulum pendidikan, memberikan beasiswa ikatan dinas dan kegiatan magang mahasiswa di perusahaan. Selain itu, juga terdapat fasilitas pendukung lain untuk memenuhi kebutuhan mahasiswa dalam perkuliahan, praktikum, maupun penelitian. Di antaranya laboratorium pusat, laboratorium komputer, smart greenhouse, bengkel, pilot plant, dan fasilitas lainnya. STIPER juga menyediakan fasilitas untuk berbagai kegiatan mahasiswa seperti fasilitas olahraga, gedung student center, dan fasilitas pengembangan minat mahasiswa yang lain. Selain itu, STIPER juga memiliki fasilitas yang dapat diakses oleh masyarakat umum, seperti mobil klinik yang merupakan laboratorium keliling, STIPER Tekno Agroforest Edupark atau STAFEP, dan galeri perkebunan yang merupakan pusat informasi berbagai komoditas perkebunan. Semua fasilitas tersebut digunakan untuk mendukung kegiatan Tridharma perguruan tinggi. Pada saat ini, STIPER memiliki jenjang pendidikan S1 yang terdiri dari 3 fakultas, yaitu Fakultas Pertanian, Fakultas Teknologi Pertanian, dan Fakultas Kehutanan. Pada jenjang pasca sarjana memiliki satu program studi yaitu Magister Manajemen Perkebunan. STIPER, World Class School of Plantation.
Premiumbeat.com.
Assalamualaikum and very good morning to all of you. We are happy to have you today, this morning, to discuss one of the most important topics in these days. Before that, I would like to especially thanks for the presence of Bapak Sujai Kartawinata, the chairperson for the STIPER Foundation at Yogyakarta. We have also with us Bapak Saad Sinaga, the executive director for Apolin, Bapak Mukti Sarjono. Pak Mukti, good morning, selamat pagi, the executive director for KAPKI, and we have also the most probably the youngest among us, Bapak Dr. Petrus Gunarso. Selamat pagi Pak Petrus. And also among us we have Pak Gulat Manurung from Dewan Pengurus Pusat Apkasindo, the Association for Smallholder Oil Palm Farmers. This morning we have the second Studium General agenda, which is started with the opening. I just do it by greeting all of you and some of you who are very important persons. And We will have the opening speech from the Rector of INSTIPER, Dr. Insinyur Harsawardana, Master of Engineering, later on, and before we are going to the main program, which is the general lectures from Dr. Zomakroda from Sirat, the new regional director for Sirat Southeast Asia islands. The background of this Studium Generale is as follows. The first one is the world is moving towards sustainable development goals. Within it, the terrestrial landscape predominantly contributes to the achievement of SDGs. That means agriculture and forestry, the constellation of governance, development strategies, and field level management and actions are in view. INSTIPER and Sirat found its history of cooperation when one of our INSTIPER eminent persons, who is Mr. Rujai Kartasasmita, received a France government award on developing cooperations in research on oil palm back in 1986. Through series of previous cooperations, discussion and communication between INSTIPER and Sirat activists, it was concluded that sustainable landscape approach is the right anchor for the future. Not only for the individual institution like INSTIPER and Sirat, but the basis for the future land-based development at subnational, national, and with that we aim to reach ASEAN region. Along this line, we invited Sirat to increase the efforts in capacity building for individuals and institutions in materializing sustainable landscape management. The joint interest of INSTIPER and Sirat is focused on transforming the current mindset of management and development towards sustainability. On the ground, we seek for the capacity of the government and production system managers to be transformed into sustainability mindset, which is, in other words, we will be producing green leaders and sustainability managers. The Studium Generale is considered as the commencement of the spirit and further initiatives in the future. The first Studium Generale was successfully organized on August the 3rd, 2021. Among major issues, it was noted that the plantation agriculture holds biggest influence on the sustainability of the landscape, particularly in this region. With that, we redesigned the serial shortlist to put oil palm as the next priority to be discussed in this Studium Generale. With respect to oil palm, there are issues on oil palm in Indonesia that we cannot ignore it. The first one is corporation versus SMEs in oil palm management, which has already been discussed last week. Oil palm in forest area, also several days ago we discussed that by the other institutions. We have also discussion on sustainable oil palm, which is commemorating of the 10 year of ISPO conducted by other institutions. Now we have geopolitics in oil palm, which is one of the biggest issue that we need to understand. Not only we need that to be criticized, but we need to understand thoroughly, and we will indicate the strategic options from the current status. And with that, we have Dr. Zomakroda. That's the background of this Studium Generale, and let me go to the next agenda. I would like to present Dr. Insinyur Harsawardana, Master of Engineering, Director of INSTIPER Yogyakarta. He passed the bachelor degree in agricultural engineering from Gajah Mada University. He holds master degree in Asian Institute of Technology (AIT) of Bangkok, Thailand, and finally he holds a doctoral degree in Rensich Friedrich Wilhelm Universität from Germany. With us right now, we will have the opening remarks, Pak Dr. Harsawardana. Forum is yours.
Okay, thank you, Pak Agus. Yeah. Good morning to all of you, honorable speaker, respected audiences and participants. On behalf of my university, Institut Pertanian Stiper Yogyakarta, Stiper University of Horticulture, I welcome all of you in webinar series on sustainable landscape management. This lecture or webinar is organized by Institut Pertanian Stiper Yogyakarta in cooperation with SIRAT as a French Agricultural Research Center for international development, and UPM, Universitas Pertanian Malaysia, and last but not least, our research center, Pusat Sains Kelapa Sawit, that has been established since a year ago. This seminar will be delivered by Dr. Roda. He is of SIRAT Director, Regional Director for Southeast Asia, and has been just appointed as a new director. And on behalf of my university, I say congratulations to you, Pak Roda, and hope for the good for your new position. And also, I would like to thanks to Pak Agus as a moderator for today's seminar. He is our senior lecturer in Faculty of Forestry, Institut Pertanian Stiper Yogyakarta. And last but not least, we have been here so many prominent persons. Pak Suchai, thanks for being here. Pak Ahmad Manggabarani, Pak Joko Supriyono, Pak Gulat Manurung, Pak Mukti, Pak Petrus, and another I cannot remember some of the prominent person here, but many thanks to be here. We know very well that palm oil is one of the main contributor to our Indonesian economics. Has been creating millions of employees and also improving the livelihood of the smallholder. This is why therefore I believe and I ensure that this webinar to this morning will be profitable, and the next few hours will be enjoyable and fruitful for all of you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Harsawardana. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we will be commencing on the main agenda, but before that, I would like to remind you that we need some protocols to be followed in participating in this general lecture. This is a general lecture using the platform of Zoom meeting, and please register by your name and institutions. We would like you to turn off your microphone when the speaker is giving the lecture. The attendance link will be shared in the Zoom meeting chat and YouTube comments. The participants is encouraged to comment, discuss, and ask questions to the speaker, and put it using the format of the name of the institution, then followed by your comments or questions. Put it in the chat room, and our secretariat will collect those comments, discussion, and we will have to put those questions to the speaker later on. And those who are requiring the certificate. We will send you the electronic certificate later on. Now, I would like to introduce Dr. Zomak Roda, the CIRAT Regional Director for Southeast Asian Island, the new installed one. Dr. Zomak is not new in this oil palm world, and it's not new in the cooperation with the INSTIPER. His achievement includes the following. He is a senior scientist of CIRAT, French Agricultural Research Center for International Development, in the department the performance of tropical production and processing systems. He is a member of the research unit which is on biomass, wood, energy, and bioproducts. Dr. Zomak Roda is a member of SESMA Laboratory at Sorbonne Paris Cité University, the Center of Studies of Social Sciences Sociales, on African, American, and Asian worlds, UMR 245. He is seconded at INTROP, currently, Institute of Tropical Forestry and Forest Products in University Putra Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur. He is a CTO on the Center of Excellence of Biomass Valorization, which is the very important development in the very near future. But not the least, he is an associate scientist of FRAME, Forest Research Institute Malaysia, in the Economics and Strategic Analysis Division. He will be moving in Jakarta very soon, hopefully, and interact with you more intensively. With that, then, please welcome Dr. Zomak Roda. Dr. Roda, the forum and time is yours.
So I will try to share my screen and launch my presentation, make it neat, share, and launch. So I chose as a, I have to move the window, perfect. I chose as a title for this talk, the new geopolitics of oil palm industry and deforestation. Why? It is because at the international level, it's hard to dissociate oil palm from deforestation. There is ground and also false ideas about that, so we are going to see that together. So that's why I put them together to address this with the eyes for you of what the people outside Indonesia have, and we are going to discuss that as scientists. So in order to dissect what are the different components of those ideas and what is salient in it and what is not. For example, one of the main concerns that we have seen in the past a position among actors in reaction to those opposition between palm oil and deforestation or confrontation. Some people were speaking about neocolonialism. We are going to see whether there is some truth or not, or what this stance is made of. And we are also going to see that the world is changing fast, and how we can think, where we can believe about oil palm industry in the new world, you know, what I call the post-COVID world realities. We are still in the COVID time, but very soon we will be in the post-COVID time. And we are already seeing that changes are happening because of that COVID disruption. So I will try to have a glance on all of this with you. So the first point is, of course, oil palm is absolutely strategic for the Indonesian industry. So it was said, and I will not come back on that. All of you know that very well. What international people from outside Indonesia know less is that oil palm is also a very strategic item for Indonesia smallholders. So I will illustrate that very shortly. Here you have a vision of which smallholder non-food plantation pays the most per hectare. Because if you're a smallholder and you have already some subsistence agriculture, and you have some time to plant non-food plantation, what will you choose? So you can ask yourself, okay, I will choose what pays the most. If you look at this criteria, clove apparently paying the most, but followed very closely by tobacco, paper, sugarcane, tea, and oil palm. So on this list, oil palm is not really the first item. The cash apparently comes from the clove. But this is not really how the smallholders are thinking, because they are not short. They are short on cash, but they're also short on time and on investment. So let's see another way to see the question, which is what pays the most per unit of cost. So if you have to spend and to invest into your plantation, you have little money on the side, your smallholders. So maybe one of your criteria will be, okay, what can I invest and what will have the best return? Then if you look at it, again, the clove is the first one. Then nutmeg is the second one. Third is cashew, and then oil palm. Oil palm is one of the good stuff. But is it still always criteria? No. When you look at the smallholders' livelihood, they also look at the time they spend, the investment in terms of work. You can measure it in terms of time, or you can measure it in terms of rupiah. So if you look at this criteria, which food plantation pays the most per unit of work, then you realize that oil palm is the number one, followed by sugarcane, then clove, nutmeg, coconut. Okay, if you put all of this in a normal graph, you compare all of those criteria together, you get a figure that looks like the one I am showing you now, where you see the work in rupiah per hectare, how much does it cost you. You see the other cost than work in rupiah per hectare, so that's the other investment cost, for the land, for the fertilizers and so on, and the dotted lines are the total cost per hectare. So from 500,000 rupiah per hectare to 1 million and 1.5 and so on until the most expensive. And when you look at this criteria, which is actually the intuitive synthetic criteria that the small farmers have, they don't compute that way. Of course, it's totally intuitive, but this is a representation of how it could work, And at the end, you realize that for the total work and with the less investment, oil palm is really one of the best placed crops. And of course, it's not a straight line. You may see that if you look at just 1 million rupiah per investment, you don't have a lot of stuff. You have cashew, coconut, nutmeg, coffee, rubber, oil palm. All the rest, it will demand more investment. So it already tells you why some people are choosing those crops. Again, if you look really at the work, and you want to have minimal investment and you have just time, and your wealth is your time, then you will choose rubber. But if you don't have much time, and you may be a bit more able to invest on the side, then you will see oil palm. You compare rubber to oil palm. Rubber is the poor investment, the investment of the poor. The poor don't have money, but they have time. They will invest. They will do rubber. And if you have a little bit more investment savvy and you want to get a bit more cash, you will save on the work and you will spend a little bit more on the other cost. On the total, you will get more with oil palm than rubber. So that explains to you why for smallholders in Indonesia, oil palm is absolutely central. A lot of them go to that choice because it's a savvy choice. It is a rational choice that makes a lot of sense. And very few people outside Indonesia know that, especially in Europe. They don't have this vision. And it's something important to emphasize on. Now, why deforestation is such an important subject, and why European, especially European, but also other non-Asian stakeholders, why they believe, I use the word believe, why they believe that avoiding imported deforestation is something that you can do by regulating palm oil trade. We're going to see if there is sense of that. So the big idea is that you have a lot of world trade of palm oil, and NGOs very early in the history came with the idea that, okay, if you act on the consumers, you will act on the trade. If you act on the trade, you will play on how the industries can behave. You know, you hurt their wallet, they will change of behavior. That was the thinking. So they were thinking, okay, we believe that there is deforestation because of palm oil. We are going to play on the trade and ban, you know, palm oil from trade or make campaigns and so on. The only issue, if you look at those trades, you know, that was a few years ago in 2016 or 2017, those trade data, but the global picture didn't change very much. If you look at this, you realize that the bigger producers are Malaysia and Indonesia, and Asia is the main consumer. And if you look at France, where some campaign originated a few years ago, you realize that France had the dream. You know, some French politicians were wanting to curb deforestation by cutting palm oil trade, and you see that the red line show the lever power effect, and it was very small. So of course it was a imperfect assessment of the reality. You couldn't, if even the palm oil was deforesting completely, you couldn't really play with that just little red line. Of course, Europe has, in fact, you see that the Europe consumption is a significant share, so that makes you understand why European action and decisions are always very scrutinized by Indonesian actors. If you look at the refined oil world trade, it's a similar pattern, except that Asia is the bigger consumer. It's auto-consumed most of the refined oil. Now, if we shift to the deforestation, we start by Malaysia, and then we are going to see Indonesia. So I represent you on this graph in million hectare per year across the time since the 1950s. So it's more than 70 years now, 70 years of history of forest loss. And it's by 5 years, because in Malaysia it's very easy to follow the 5 years plan. You know, every 5 years they have a complete assessment. So by 5 years plan, you can see what was the forest lost. So you see that you had a peak, you know, of forest loss in between the 70s and 1980. So it's a kind of bell curve. And if you put the development of the oil palm on that graph, you see that the palm oil extension in a million hectare per year doesn't match clearly. So the most of the forest loss did happen, you see with those graphics, before or at the beginning of the palm oil extension. You cannot, with those numbers, draw the conclusion that most of the deforestation is done by palm oil. What you can know is that you have a zone of concomitance where you had both forest loss and palm oil extension. And here, if you look and if you scrutinize the numbers, you realize that half of it was indeed deforestation by oil palm. So forests were replaced by oil palm, but half of it was absolutely not deforestation. Half of it was palm oil growing over former plantations that were rubber plantations. So the palm oil deforestation was much exaggerated by the international vision. Now, if you look at the NGO numbers, that's very interesting. In red, you have, I took from the website of Global Forest Watch what is supposed to be the deforestation by palm oil, according to, or deforestation. And we are going to look at these numbers to highlight the fact that we need much more precise scientific and technical analysis of the stuff, and not only journalistic approach. So if we look and if we scrutinize the Global Forest Watch deforestation numbers, the website was claiming that a minimum of 2.15 million hectares of primary forest was lost since 2000. Okay, let's admit this number. If it is true, let's compare it to the real numbers of forest area. We have those very defined and very precise numbers for Malaysia. We also have the area for agriculture, and also I added forest excluding Sarawak, and you see the total. And I added on your graphic a little bracket on the right where you see the scientific uncertainty. So if you are extremely careful to look at the mapping systems, the remote sensing, and so on, you have always a scientific uncertainty, and the extent of the bracket represents the extent of that scientific uncertainty. Now, I come back to the Global Forest Watch data. They said 2.15 million hectares of primary forest was lost since the 2000. So even if you put it at the lowest part of the bracket of the scientific uncertainty, the beginning of the euro would be the place where it started, 2000. And you see that there is total discrepancy between their number and the reality of the forest area at the time. That was documented, and it is totally documented. You can go back to all the scientific literature. Now, if you put their own assessment of tree cover that is differently from primary forest, the number is even higher. And if you, and that was 2000, and if you push back to cross the real data, you realize that they claim a number that actually was in between 1960s and the mid 70s, and they claim that it was the number for 2000. So there is a discrepancy in the data. That discrepancy, I want to try to understand their methodology, is mostly because in that kind of information or NGO, what is important is the sensationalistic, and they always take the safety of the lowest number. But if you add the lowest number every year and you don't balance by the plus or minus of the scientific error, actually you end up by exaggerating the error. So we have to be very, very careful with the sensationalistic numbers that you hear in the media, or you can see in the NGOs, even those who are very serious and pretend to be a watch guard. You always need to compare that with sound, extremely proven and verified scientific methods. So here is an illustration of that need when we talk about a sensitive subject as those. I'm not defending, I'm just stating that we need to use extremely sound and extremely sturdy methods in order not to make errors that can escalate into overestimation or underestimation. Now we have a look at the real Indonesian deforestation by oil palm. Again, in Indonesia, the numbers were sometime lacking, so I don't have the numbers before 1980, but we have reconstituted them. So this figure was made by my colleague Philippe Guizol, who is a forest specialist of Indonesia, who has spent a lot of time in Indonesia, and some of you know him very well. And if you plot that deforestation numbers against the palm oil development in Indonesia, the vision is even worse, actually, than what you have in Malaysia. You know, you apply the same reasoning, you realize that the real boom of palm oil extension in Indonesia is extremely recent. And you cannot match the peaks in 2000 and then the late 2010, 2015. Those peaks of palm oil development in Indonesia absolutely do not match with the peak of deforestation. So again, palm oil could be a contributor to deforestation in Indonesia, but absolutely not is not the main factor of it. Now, with the development in the last years, it can become the main factor. So that's why the landscape management has to be extremely sound, because now the development is going quickly and the deforestation rate is very low. So when you have a lot of development of one crop and you have a deforestation rate which is low compared to the past, somehow it magnifies the possible action. So we have to be very careful. But again, if you plot in red what is the real deforestation by oil palm, you see that the peak, there were a peak, and the peak was around 2010, and it seems to be diminishing since that time. So these are real proof numbers that we have checked and cross-checked. Now, if you take another stance, because you still here, despite the numbers that I'm showing you, you still have a stance by many stakeholders outside Indonesia. We want to curb deforestation, and we don't want imported deforestation. So we don't want that the products that we are buying are tainted by possible deforestation. So let's think in the worst case. Worst case would be that 100 of oil palm would cause deforestation, 100% of it. It's not true, I repeat, but it's a hypothesis. The worst hypothesis, you could see that, okay, 100% of oil palm would cause deforestation. If I catch all the trade, what will happen? First, I realize that only 68% of the production is internationally traded. So if I play on the production that is traded, I will not touch 100% of the deforestation. In the case it is 100%, it will be less, only 2/3. Now, what is the real consumption by EU? I chose EU because I am an EU citizen, and EU is very adamant to discuss palm oil related to deforestation. So as scientists, we have to put the real facts, because only the real facts can help to target the real cause and then to solve the real cause. So if you look at the trade by EU, only 9.4% of the production is really consumed by EU. So the implication of that is, if EU is only looking at imported deforestation, it will not address correctly the real deforestation process, even in the case that 100% of oil palm would be cause of deforestation. Actually, what it is addressing correctly, it is addressing correctly the feel good, the need of feeling good for consumers in Europe. That for sure it is addressing, but it is not addressing the real cause. So, of course, it is even worse if actually the oil palm is causing less deforestation than those theoretical 100%. So the reality is fighting imported deforestation is not the best tool. And we scientists are advocating for finding the real causes when there are causes, and fighting those and finding solutions at the roots of the causes, not mediatic solutions. So at the heart of the palm oil industry issues with Europe, is this really a question of neocolonialism? Because with the gloomy figures that I just showed you, you could say, but Europe is against us. So I heard many times in Indonesia and also in Malaysia, yes, it's just neocolonialism. I think the reality is a bit more complex than that, and we are going to see that together. First, I give you an old picture, but the proportion has not changed very much. In 2014, you had about 200 million tons of vegetable oil produced in the world by big regions, and the circles their size represent the million tons produced in all of these regions. We are speaking of vegetable oils, not animal oil. If you plot those production of vegetable oils against an axis of sustainable intensification of agriculture, how much ton per hectare you produce, you see that most of the regions that are producing vegetable oils are quite low in their axis, and Southeast Asia is the one which is the highest. Why? Because of palm oil. It happens that palm oil is the most productive vegetable oil crop on Earth per hectare. So it mostly concentrated in Southeast Asia. So it places Southeast Asia very high on the axis of sustainable intensification of agriculture, which is already good, because in order to save the environment, you need to be intense. You need to produce a lot of tons per hectare and less and have a lower footprint in order to save, for example, the forest or other land uses. So that's give us the idea on another criteria, which is the actual footprint. So if you put a footprint there, which would be the hectare per capita that you need to feed or to produce that oil, then you have a picture of all the production zone. I am a bit naughty, so referencing to the Western movie, the good, the bad. I don't tell you where is the ugly here. Just the good actually is the one which has already a lot of sustainable intensification and a very low footprint. It is Southeast Asia. It's that quadrant. And the worst, what I label the bad is the quadrant where you have a low sustainable intensification and a high footprint in hectare per capita. And in that quadrant, you find South America and Northern America. Those regions are well known for producing soybean, for example. And all the others are placing in the other quadrants. And the medium quadrants of you are low in footprint and low in sustainable intensification host the majority of producers: Southern Europe, Eastern Asia, South Asia, Eastern Europe, Western Africa, and so on. You will see Western Europe, Central America, and Western Asia in the intermediate quadrant. So you have already a strategic here, a geostrategic mapping of the world of producing vegetable oil. And this is the future, because in the future, we cannot afford more footprint and we cannot afford less sustainable agriculture. So we have to play and as possible to shift the production from the bad or the low performing to push them to the good. So if we move that back to all that 200 plus million tons of vegetable oil, and I just said we have to look at the future. In the future, you have to change the stuff. How do you change? You change if you have money. Like the smallholders I was illustrating a little earlier, in order to change your practice or to choose a practice or to develop something, you need to invest a little bit. So where is the money? At the world level, if I express the money as a GDP, we have, at the time of this picture, we had 80,000 billion USD GDP that you can invest somehow in that sustainability. Part of it can be invested into the vegetable oil sustainability. So if I put back those investment power on those numbers, then you realize that you have discrepancies, huge discrepancies. For example, the region that has the highest potential in terms of sustainable intensification of agriculture, Southeast Asia, has the lowest available GDP to invest into it. And the regions like Northern America that have a very bad performance in terms of footprint and sustainable intensification, they have already very much overflowing GDP compared to their production of palm oil. And you see that Western Europe in this case, Northern Europe also in this case, even Eastern Asia has an excess of GDP compared to the production. So you realize that compared to the productivity and the places where it is produced, and if you compare that to the investment power, you have a discrepancy. So these figures tells you that in terms of strategy, those who can invest are not the same as those who can produce. So you need to have cooperation at that time. You need to have realignment of how the money is spent in order to help the improvement of all those productions. Now, if I put back that on the world map, I draw for you dotted lines because you realize that two different worlds are appearing. I call them two very different production systems. In the north, except in the former Soviet world, today Russia, you see that you have a production of vegetable oil that is small in comparison to the excess of GDP that you have in those economies. And in the south, it's the exact contrary. You have a lot of potential to produce vegetable oils, but the GDPs are very low. And the south countries, the tropical countries, are absolutely not in power to have the investment they would need to have to improve the sustainability of their own vegetable oil productions. While in the north, you have a clear overcapacity of GDP compared to their production needs. So to me, when you look at those numbers, the call is, hey, the Western world or the Northern world should share a part of its GDP in order to help the research and the change of practices and the improvement of sustainability in the South, instead of just focusing on the trade. Trade is a good issue, but if we really want to solve the roots of and the geostrategical roots of the issues, we have to look at more share of more investment from the North into the improvement of what is done. I'm very proud to say that what CIRAD is doing is what France is doing through CIRAD. France is spending a lot of money in the salary of many scientists in CIRAD, and CIRAD is totally devoted to that, to do science in the tropical countries in order to help to find solution, not from the north, but solution with the partners. So we work with INSTIPER deeply, and the way we are working with is we find together solutions. We don't bring you solutions because probably the North idea are not the best, and we work together in order to find together solutions. That is an example of what should be done in a wider scale at the world level. The next picture, still on the same map, shows you where you have oil crop seeds deficits and surpluses. So you have a surplus of oil crop seeds because in America, the production system is mostly based on soybean, and soybean produce seeds, and those seeds are traded. And the countries that are craving, or the regions that are craving for oil seeds that they transform themselves are first Europe, but mostly East Asia. So if you look at the trade of oil seeds, it's a world that is completely dominated by the trade between America and Asia. Hence, the past years when Trump was still at the power, you heard about the oil war between America and China. It is a strategic feature. But if you look at the trade of the oil, the picture is very different. So here, you have the vegetable oil deficits and the surpluses. The picture is totally different because the main producer now is Southeast Asia. That's where you have a main surplus of oil, and all the flows are going mostly to South Asia, India, the Indian world, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Europe. And the center of gravity that is growing now is India and Africa. That's where the strategic places are for the future market of the oil. These markets are not so much paying compared to Europe in terms of volume and quality, but they are where it's growing the fastest, and we are going to see that together later on. So you have now a picture of this, and you also see that you have a clear competition between the American world that is based on soybean, that is a producer and that is exporting oil, and the Asian world, which is based on palm oil. So you have north-south and you have east-west, and that is giving you the strategic vision. And if you look more at the strategic vision in terms of production and consumption, I put for all the continents or the mega regions, in the production and the consumption for each of them, and in green the surplus, and in red the deficit. And you realize that EU 28 has a deficit. It has more consumption than production in case of South Asia. And then the region that has the overwhelming surplus is Southeast Asia. So now with that, you have the equation of a trade war. All the other surplus regions, South America, North America, the rest of Europe, East Asia, are in that map. They are following. And now, if you are in those deficit regions and you want to protect your own industry that is producing your own oil, then you have to fight very hard because you're structurally in deficit. That gives you a part of the explanation of why you have EU, which is bent on protecting soybean, or no, protecting also colza, rapeseed, and also bent against importing palm oil. You have a structural reason behind that. And in those northern regions, the EU is the only one which has significant oil deficit. That's why EU is much more critic on the issue compared to North America. America is critic as well, but it's more a trade issue that can be resolved by negotiation. So Southeast Asia is the only southern region with really significant oil surplus. Now, to understand this geopolitics, we have to understand that there is behind that a food security and a diet change issue. I take it was easy for me to find the statistics and the publication about that. An example of what did happen in France since the 18th century, so some time ago. And we see that when the people were poor, the daily and along the history, when the society was developing, the number of kilocalories per capita was increasing until around the beginning of the 20th century. You had the sailing of the total energy intake. And concomitant with the sailing of total energy intake, what you see is that the cereals, the potatoes, the pulses, the starch, all the starch products, they sailed first and then they start to reduce. And what took place when the people were not hungry anymore? When they were not hungry anymore, they were starting to eat less starch products, and they were starting to eat more fats, more sugar, more oils, and also more meat. You see that sailing there. If you see the same picture in terms of diet, you compare the carbohydrates and the fat, you see that the proteins are stable, but really that's the carbohydrate part of the diet that is decreasing, and it's the fat that is increasing until you reach kind of level, between 40-50%, where it's kind of stabilizing. It's the well-fed, developed society. And I am showing you that because all the societies in the world are following that trend. We have here 70 years of statistics of fat demand increase compared to the income and compared to the urbanization level. For all the countries in the world, you see that over the last 70 years, when the income in terms of GDP in USD per capita is increasing, the fat consumption in terms of consumption per capita and per day is increasing. And you have the same trend with the urbanization. So the urbanization and the income are cofactors of the fat consumption. I call it the McDonald's diet, or the grab car diet, the grab food diet. When you ask the grab or to deliver your food at home, the fast food urban way of living. And if you divide the world in terms of developed countries, developing and emerging countries, and least developed countries, you see that the developed countries, they already sailed. They increased in the past, and they already reached their sailing. You see that the developing and emerging countries, they are still climbing. They are not yet to the sailing. And the least developing countries, they are really far from it. So if you continue those trends, what you realized is that the world is going to need much more vegetable oil than is still consuming now. So you have a consumption today. You can predict for sure, because of the development of the societies, because the world is becoming more equal, that for sure the world is going to need much more vegetable oil in the future. That is an unavoidable trend. If you cut down this by continents, Northern America is a bit, they eat more fat than Europe, so their selling is higher than the European selling. So I put in dot line the two extreme line, the Europe diet, that's the, you go in France, you eat and you don't go too fat, or you go in America, you eat burgers and you get a bit fatter. Maybe it's an explanation, I don't know, at least it's a good joke. And you put those lines, as the minimum and the maximum of what could be the reach of the regions when they are developing. And I put in little red arrows on those graphics for former Soviet Union, the East Europe, Central America, North Africa and Middle East, East Asia, South America, Sub-Saharan Africa, and also Southeast Asia. All these regions, you see the absolute gap between the consumption of today vegetables and the probable selling on those societies when they finish to develop. So Indonesia is going to need more vegetable oil in the future. Also, Southeast Asia is going to need oil, and all those regions. And you see the biggest gap is in East Asia and in Sub-Saharan Africa. Sub-Saharan Africa is the next big market. So when you see all of this, no way that you can stop the production of vegetable oil. You have to increase it. So what we saw before when I was speaking about sustainable agricultural intensification and footprint becomes absolutely topical when you look at this. Now you have all the cards to understand the possible geopolitical war between the producing systems, between people who are producing oil, vegetable oil with this crop, or people who are producing with these other crops. So it's not a question of neocolonization anymore. It's a real question of business, actually, and people fighting for their own business and to take the market. In the future, you can predict with those little simple models that I do, that the minimum intake of the world demand in 2050 will be in between 400 million tons and maybe 500 million tons. That's the minimum of it. I have two graphics: the lowest of the scenario and the highest of the scenario. So compared to what was in 2014, you see the gap. The increase is going to double. We are going to need more than double of what was produced in 2014 by 2015. So the society in general at the world level has to prepare to feed the world with that vegetable oil and to feed it sustainably. If you look in terms of market share, what I put in green is the trend of oil palm. The others are soybean, rapeseed, sunflower. That's the main, not all the oil crops, but the main. So if you look at the market share, the one who took all the market share and that cost dearly to the others is palm oil. So when you look at these numbers, you understand why for some actors, palm oil is the public enemy number one, because it is eating the market shares of the others. And that's the market shares of the main vegetable oils in a global view. So now, where to grow this? The issue becomes footprint and land bank. So where does it grow? For palm oil, it's very easy. You have in Malaysia, Indonesia, that are the two big mammoth of the production. A bit of Thailand. Thailand is growing fast. And the rest is Africa, where the palm oil is originating from. And the contenders are Colombia and Ecuador, those countries where the palm oil growers are very smart, very clever, and already having a very smart strategy in order to address the social issues and the footprint issues and the media communication issues. So they are very good into that. They are not in defensive position, they are in active, proactive position. So we have lessons to get from the palm oil producers in Latin America, even they are still small. When you look at their strategies of development and communication, a lot of stuff are really smart there. If you look at the other vegetable oils, then you see a glimpse of what I was speaking about. The soybean oil world is an American world. The sunflower world is mostly a European and North world. And rapeseed world, apart from Canada, is also a mostly European world, and significantly a Chinese and Indian world as well. So here you have a strategic map. We are going to focus on the palm oil to see how does it work compared to the other oils. So if you look at the productivity, palm oil is the one that is producing the most in terms of ton per hectare per year. And in average, 3.5 ton. This is very low, and that's the average. You know that with the best clones and the best agricultural practices, palm oil growers can do up to 12 ton per hectare per year. So the average is very low and is already extremely big compared to rapeseed, sunflower, and soybean. And now if you look at changing the perspective, how many hectares I need to produce one ton of oil per year, then those numbers become this. Palm oil needs less than 0.5 or around 0.5 hectare per year, while rapeseed needs 1.5, sunflower more than 2, soybean 2.5, almost 3. So that's the game. The countries that are competing with the production of palm oil, they're also lacking of space. So behind that competition, those issues about deforestation or other issues about comparing the products, one main issue is where it's going to be grown, where is the land to grow it. We have seen that the urbanization is happening mainly in the, it was a big factor of the vegetable oil. And you see that the urban population is growing where? Not in Europe, not in North America, it's growing in the developing and emerging countries. So in terms of percentage of world population, the developing and emerging countries are soon touching the 80% of the world urban population. So it's there. The main market is not anymore in Europe, it's not anymore in America. Where it is in those urbanizing countries. And I'm not the only one to say that. Here I give you slides from Cargill. Cargill presentation a few years ago. And you see that they were looking at where the people are going to grow and where the income is going to grow. And that's the urbanizing world. So they were looking at the people who will change from the share of $2,000 to $3,000 dollars of income per year to the share to 5,000 to 6,000. That's where their market is. And this market, if you look down, is those countries: China, India, Nigeria, Pakistan, Indonesia, Bangladesh, Philippines. That's the world where the demand for vegetable oil is going to increase enormously in the coming years. That's where the big companies in the world are looking already at. So if you hear the politicians, most of them are behind the schedule already. If you listen to the companies, the big corporations, you have a better picture of where they are targeting. So you have a global race to constitute what people call land banks, a reserve of land, in order to grow those crops and then to control the production. So actually today you have a big ongoing war between where to invest and where to have the world. So the investor countries, number one is the USA, North America. Number two is Malaysia. You have a lot of investors in Malaysia. Number three is Middle East countries, UAE. Where are the main target countries? Number one, Papua New Guinea. Number two, Indonesia. Indonesia is the number two target for having land banks. Number three and four and five, it's all in it's in Africa, and six in Brazil. So if you group those quantity by region, then you have a big chunk of land bank in Southeast Asia, but the biggest is in Africa. The others are in North Europe, around the former Soviet Union countries, and in Brazil. So there, this is where you have, in competition, several corporations from the north and corporations from the south. So Indonesian corporations are already on the track. Singaporean corporations, Malaysian corporations, everyone is there, and Cargill and Louis Dreyfus and Archer England and the other big are also competing. So speaking of them, let's have a look on those major world agribusiness corporations who are already looking south. So we call them the ABCDs, the ABCD empire, because A for Archer, Archer's Daniel Midland, B for Bunge, C for Cargill, and D for Louis Dreyfus. So the ABC, they're all in North America, and you see their seat either near in Chicago or in the East Coast. And Louis Dreyfus is the only one in Europe. Actually, the seat is in Netherlands. And all together, they are collectively controlling at least 70% of the world grain market, and 60% of the Brazilian soybean is dominated by ADM and Bunge. They are the big major agribusiness corporations. Compared to them, the big Indonesian corporations, like, I don't know, Sinarmas or others, are just little dwarf. That's the reality of the competition on the map. And if you look at those companies where they invest, you have here picture I took from the websites of all of them. So you see ADM in green, this is where they are located. Bunge in blue, this is the countries where they are located. Cargill, again in green, where they are located. Louis Dreyfus is more difficult to see, it's little dots, you know. But the common points of all of them, you have the triangle of the difficult countries. This triangle of the difficult countries is Africa, Middle East, and former Soviet Union countries. This is where you have a lot of political risk. And also this is where it's developing countries, which is fast developing. It is where you have a lot of urbanization, but it is also where the politics are very unstable. When the politics are unstable, investing in those countries is difficult. And this is where those major Western corporations have historically some difficulties to invest. But those same regions is where Indonesia, Singapore, and Malaysia corporations are very good to invest. Why? Because especially in Indonesia, the corporations in Indonesia, they did learn already to work with the difficult politics. They learn already to work with changing politics and uncertainty in politics. They are very good into adapting. So they have tools. We could discuss for hours on that, but they have very good tools, organization tools and management tools and trade tools to invest into those difficult regions. So one of the unspoken main factor of those underlying wars between vegetable oils is the capacity of Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore to invest in Africa. And that's an issue, and that's a concern for those big corporations we are speaking about. Coming back to the European geopolitics, because it's a big concern in Indonesia, so I cannot skip the subject. First question, is it an energetic issue? Because all of you have heard about biodiesel, and the ban in Europe now is not on the oil palm, it's on the oil palm to use as a biodiesel or as a biofuel product. So if you look at it, I give you the key to understand what is happening. So here you have a map or a picture of what I call the European dilemma. You have all the countries that are producing biodiesel, and in color are the different sources of the biodiesel. Soybean oil in green, in orange rapeseed oil, and in blue palm oil. And apart from Thailand, Colombia and Indonesia, very few countries have a majority of palm oil use in their biodiesel. But two countries, France and Germany, who are producing a lot of biodiesel, are using a lot of rapeseed. And if you remember the graphic where I did show you the productivity of rapeseed compared to palm oil, it's one of the costly to produce, and it's one which needs a lot of land to produce. So you have a dilemma. Europe is full already. They don't have space to develop. They have deforested everything that they deforest. The rest is protected forest. They cannot expand their land. So they cannot expand really their oil production by expanding in rapeseed. So if they need to produce more rapeseed oil, what can they do? They have to import. But every import will damage their local, or will compete with their local producing rapeseed oil. The other country which is in the same dilemma is Poland. So you see, it's a European dilemma. Now, if you look at the industrial domestic consumption of palm oil, of vegetable oil in Europe, all vegetable oil, and in black is palm oil, in gray is rapeseed oil, in dotted black is soybean, and in dotted gray is sunflower. I put you the start of the defiscalization in biodiesel. Europe, France, and Germany were very adamant to increase the use of biodiesel because they wanted to fight the diesel use, the use of fossil fuel. So in order to replace fossil fuel, a smart idea was, why not we use biodiesel? So they said, okay, we are going to use our rapeseed, and we are going to defiscalize the use of biodiesel in order to promote indirectly the rapeseed industry, and that would be good for our carbon footprint. The problem is, when they did that, of course, it helped a lot the rapeseed oil. And you see the rapeseed consumption in Europe is shooting from the time of that defiscalization of biodiesel. It works well. But what you see in the black line, it also increased the consumption of palm oil, because it was biodiesel that was defiscalized. So if you were a smart biodiesel producer in Europe, you could buy cheaper palm oil and get still the defiscalization. So you had that increase of palm oil import, and that was damaging so much the finance of Europe that they have to stop the defiscalization. So they stopped that defiscalization in 2009. And what you see is from that level, they start the rapeseed consumption started to sail. It was a sailing. It was not increasing anymore. But the palm oil consumption was increasing still. Why? Because European consumer had the taste of palm oil, and they already knew, oh, it's good. We can use it. It's cheap. So let's continue to use it. So Europe found itself in a trap where it did open a kind of Pandora box that they couldn't close anymore once they have. In 2003, 2009, during the biodiesel defiscalization, I put palm oil consumption against rapeseed oil price. Each time that the rapeseed oil price was increasing, the palm oil consumption was increasing. So every season, every time that, in winter, no rapeseed, the rapeseed oil is increasing in price, the temptation for everyone was to buy more palm oil. And in 2009 up to now, once they stopped the end of biodiesel defiscalization, the rapeseed oil stayed very high, didn't come back. So they put themselves in a terrible trap. If you look differently, that is the consumption, the feedstock that you need to make European biodiesel during 2009-2016. You see that the red is the imported palm oil, and it did increase. You see that the oil seed in blue, the vegetable oil from EU grown oil seed didn't increase really much. So somehow the politics failed because, I put brackets, because palm oil is too competitive. It's too tempting for a producer of biodiesel in Europe to use palm oil, because you can get a container of palm oil. It's still cheaper at your harbor when you get it in Europe than it is to use rapeseed. So you have that kind of complication. Now you have here the key to understand the position of EU, against palm oil. Need to protect their farmers and their rapeseed, and palm oil is damn too competitive. And now, where are the main EU palm oil importers? You see that Spain and Italy, mainly for food, but also mainly because if you need to import a vegetable oil, Spain and Italy, they are a Mediterranean country. Mediterranean is very dry. You have pokok zaitun, you have the olive tree, but olive oil is not something that you can feed the planet with it. It doesn't produce enough. It's a quality oil, but it's not a big oil that you use for biodiesel or whatever. So if they need industrial oil, they have to import it from the north of Europe or from tropical countries. And when you're in Italy or when you're Spain, 1,000 kilometers of oil per railway from colza fields or having container ship, the cost is easy to sell, is better to have palm oil. Now, in Netherlands, why in Netherlands they are importing a lot of palm oil? Because Netherlands is the siege of a lot of oil industry, oil chemistry. So they do plenty of products that are going to use in the food, and products that are not oil anymore, that are molecules created, and they're also creating a lot of molecules that are going to be used in many kind of different industries. So you have refining factories, and that's why Netherlands is the other main gate of entry of palm oil in Europe, because the industry is going to still use a lot of palm oil. I am explaining that now. If you compare the fossil fuel in black with the agro resources or the vegetable oil in green, you see that even though the chains are chemically different, one is oxidation chemistry, the other one is reduction chemistry, at the end, you get exactly the same products, the C1, the C2, the C3, the C4, the C5, the C6, all the aromatics and the alkanes. And you have basically a possibility to completely replace the organochemistry, which is the heart, the core of the modern civilization of today. Our modern civilization, I said Western, it's an error. Our global modern civilization is based on the petrol oleochemistry. And actually what is happening, the vegetable oils have the potential, the chemical potential to replace it completely. Or if not completely, very much. You see that with this picture, you see that with this other picture, where at the end, you realize that if you use vegetable oil, you can produce all the polyester, the polyamides, the polyesteramides, the polyurethanes that were at the heart of the textile and composite revolution of the 21st century after the post-World War II. So the potential is there. And this is where the next fight is going to happen. It won't be to feed the people, it will be to feed the industry. So this fight is illustrated there. You can make the same plastics or the same, polystyrene in this case, by fossil fuel or by vegetable oil. And that is a company that is in Germany, and they are very proud to use their flagship to say our product is made of recycled or organic or renewable source. That's the
Sudah? Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately the signal of Pak Roda stopped suddenly, and I would like to ask you to urge you to wait for a minute. Before that, I would like to use Indonesian to say something. Jadi kuliah umum dari Pak Roda ini memuat 6 topik diskusi. Yang pertama adalah posisi strategis dari sawit rakyat atau smallholder. Yang kedua adalah menanyakan, memang bisa dunia itu mengatur perdagangan kelapa sawit, minyak sawit. Yang nomor 3 menyangkut geopolitik mengenai ketahanan pangan dan perubahan pola makan dari negara-negara konsumen, yang dimana di situ tadi disebutkan di situ disebutkan bahwa semakin itu merubah konsumsi, maka minyak minyak nabati akan menjadi semakin penting. Pak Roda sudah balik ke kita dan kita lanjutkan kembali. Pertanyaan-pertanyaan boleh diajukan dalam bahasa Indonesia. Pak Roda, time is given back to you. Sorry.
I was using. I hope you see the picture I was showing, where you have this polystyrene box that the German company is proudly using. So it's a way to represent that you have plenty of added value that are totally capable to replace what the fossil fuel is using. And this is where you have a new challenge. And here I take a picture that I took, I think, from the Jakarta Post a few years ago. I'm not sure if it was from Gapki or from another organization of the industry sawit in Indonesia. But that picture is very good because it shows the ladder, of the value added. And I added with the little arrows in orange where it is produced. And you realize that mostly in Southeast Asia, it is the low part of the ladder that is produced. The CPO, the refined oil, the countries like chemistry, glycerin, fatty alcohol, methyl ester. I don't say that the higher products like derivatives or specialties, cosmetics, are not produced in Indonesia. There are plenty of them produced in Indonesia. But at the world level of the production, the region where most of those derivatives and specialties are produced is not in Southeast Asia. It is in Europe. And this is where the challenge is. In future, the real challenge will be a competition between Europe to keep the share for the industries of Europe, to keep a market share of those high added value production. And they will have to continue to import oil anyway. That's why you will never see a ban on the production or of the importation of oil palm to make those derivatives and specialties. So be happy. The ban will be on biodiesel, but I probably never on those. They cannot hurt their own industry. But the real challenge in Indonesia will also to grow that part and to be, you know, the big competitor having all the ladder of the scale. And that challenge is also with South America and with in the future Africa. Now I promised to you that I was going to speak a bit of the COVID. What's about the COVID? I consider that the COVID, it is an acid test that reveals that it is time for producers to move up the palm oil value chain. Just the one that we illustrated just now. So how it is an acid test? Look here at the EU palm oil imports between 1990 up to December 2020. So in the full of the COVID crisis. And you see that in EU, started in April, you know, when you had the crisis, you know, when they block everything, like everywhere in the world, you had around 20 to 30% of drop in goods imports. So all goods imports dropped by 20, 30%. All or not all? We are going to see that. That's a really good question. So you have a complete halt of the industries, and you see that they started again to import goods in when the industry started again. If you look here, I have members from Malaysia. Because I was in Malaysia, it was faster for me to get that data. But maybe we can compare that with the Indonesian data. I hope we have a similar figure. If not, that would be very interesting. What we see is that the European imports of oil, palm oil imports, didn't drop. Yes, a little bit, 9% by 2020. But when you look, that 9% drop is something like the noise, you know, of the every year's up and downs. If you look very carefully at the Malaysia palm oil drop, yeah, you see it, but honestly, it's not significant. You had similar drops or bigger drops in 2014-15. So when you look at those pictures, the first image that comes to your mind is, hey, maybe the COVID was not that hard on the palm oil imports to Europe. And now, if you look to something else, to the growth rates of EU 27 trades of goods by product groups, the level is zero. So most of the products groups, the trade, import and export is dropped because of COVID. Raw material, it dropped. Energy, it dropped. Machinery and vehicles, it dropped. Other manufactured and products, it dropped. Food and drink is stayed around the zero. Chemicals is stayed just above the zero. Wow. You realize that the agrochemistry industry could have been staying afloat while all the rest was going down. What's the reason of that? It's because even if you have the industry, even if you have everyone in lockdown in their home, you need to feed them. And you need to feed them, especially with all those, I was saying, grad food products, you know, the products that you deliver at home. And that's industrial food. Huh? If we look to what did China did, because China is the good picture of the industry for the world, China trade and exports too dropped everywhere. The total export of China dropped in 2020 in red. And their export to Africa, Europe, Latin America, Germany, USA, UK, Italy, it dropped. The only region where it didn't drop is ASEAN. Very interesting. If I look to the imports to US, US imports from the world, it dropped. From Africa, from EU, from Latin America, from Germany, Canada, Japan, Korea, China, it dropped. The only place it didn't drop and even it increased is ASEAN, especially Malaysia, Mexico, Vietnam. I don't have the Indonesia on that figure because I didn't produce that figure. I took from Agarwal, a famous economist. It is telling us that the COVID created a possible reorganization of the world because Southeast Asia, and it is one of my data as an economist, Southeast Asia is a place where people know how to reorganize very quickly their industry. You have a real know-how specific to Southeast Asia to do that. And this is probably what did happen. My hypothesis is during the COVID, Southeast Asia was the real reason able to quickly adapt to the new reality, to quickly reorganize their factories very quickly, and to quickly take on the orders in the world. So when the people were frantically Googling and sending their emails to their suppliers and so on, can you do that? Can you give me, I need 2 containers of this, I need 3 containers of that. Southeast Asia is the region that probably was the most ready to react. And this is where the next economic war is going to be. It's the fact that other regions are realizing that Southeast Asia is becoming a real contender in the economic war for the future. It is still a developing region. It is still a region where we have a lot of issues for the sustainability of the agriculture, but it is a region that is able to industrialize very quickly or to do smart industry. So it's a competitor on the marketplace. So I came to the conclusion with 2 main messages. I will develop these messages in 2 slides after. First, COVID created opportunities in Southeast Asia to climb the ladder of global added value chains. And the challenge is now to finance the sustainability of the tropical production system. So you see with the COVID issue, Asia was the fastest to reorganize. So my hypothesis is in the coming years, Southeast Asia is going to continue that reorganization, probably take a lot of market shares into the ladder of value-added oleochemicals, especially those from vegetable oils. And we are going to see most probably Indonesia, Malaysia, but probably Indonesia would be faster on that course, an increase of the investment and the development of industries able to do that. And then you will have new competitions with the Western world that would be more in the industrial world and less in the agriculture. And the other thing is with this added value, the main challenge will be how to finance the sustainability of the production system. You see that in the north, if you look at the productivity of vegetable oils per hectare, it's average. The blue is average, the light blue is the lowest, and the black is the highest. So the north is not going to change very much. It's already in average position. But in the south, Latin America is already in average position. Southeast Asia is the highest productivity already, and Africa and South Asia are where the most challenging productivity are. And this is where, especially in Africa, the challenge will be probably to grow more and more palm oil and to reform the existing palm oil industry that is existing in Africa and to develop it. So it will be a challenge because NGOs are going to be very careful to look at whether it creates more deforestation or not, or this kind of issue. So with that, I think you have a picture of the possible main challenge I see for the sustainability of the industry of palm oil and the sustainability of palm oil itself in the future. Thank you very much. And now we can go back to the general discussion.
Yeah, thank you very much, Pak Roda. A very powerful presentation. As I say, it's powerful because it contains of a lot of results from the research, and the messages are very strong. From A to Z on geopolitics of palm oil. However, many messages, all are important, so it's not easy for us to chew on all of those messages. So what we plan is to again discuss this by themes of your presentations. I noticed that there are 6 themes of yours. The first one is on the strategic position of small and medium enterprises in oil palm. The second is asking about the regulation of palm oil trade. The third is on geopolitics of food security and diet change. The fourth is on geopolitics of the production, how the production side can be influenced by geopolitics related with the footprint and land bank. The fifth is basically addressing the European Union geopolitics, and the sixth was on the impacts of COVID on geopolitics of palm oil. All of the 6 themes are very, very interesting. I would like to again make an apology that the PowerPoint presentation was stopped after slide number 52, but the entire slide can be accessed from the Secretariat of the STUDIUM General for your perusal further. Now we have a discussion session, and I have listed 3 of the eminent persons to say something, comments, who are on my list: Pak Sujai Kartasasmita, Pak Sahat Sinaga, and Pak Joko Supriyono from KAPI, Pak Sahat from Indonesian oil palm industry, Pak Sujai from the board of the Steeper Foundation. I will give all of these persons 3 minutes each to express their comments and probable questions, and then I will go for the audience. I have listed 5 persons who are already posted the questions, comments on the chat room. From Pak Dodi Mulyanto from SMART TBK, from Pak Ali Abdul Wahid from UNY, from Pak Yohanes Samsir. The next is from Mr. Reinhardt from Instiper, and Ms. Bahul Fajar from Instiper also. I will give you each about 2 minutes just to read your posted questions. I will start with giving the time to express the comments from Pak Sujai Kartasasmita. I'm very sorry, sir, the time available for you is only 3 minutes. Pak Sujai, are you still here? Forum is yours.
Stop.
First, I would like to thank Dr. Roda for the information he provided us on so many subjects relating to the palm oil industry. There is, however, one topic which I would like to inform you. Apart from this very, very interesting webinar, I like to inform you that I see this webinar from a different perspective. You know the reason why? I consider this webinar as a celebration of the golden anniversary of collaboration between French scientists and Indonesian scientists in the field of palm oil research. Let me tell you the history. About 50 years ago, there was no CIRAD yet. The institution was called IRHO.
Yes.
And two scientists from IRHO came to see me and asked me whether it would be possible to have a collaboration with Marihat Research Station, which was newly established by that time. The reason why they came to see me was at the recommendation of the World Bank, since we were going to receive a loan from the World Bank for rehabilitation of oil palm in Indonesia, especially in state-owned companies. So the two gentlemen were, first, Mr. Dr. Olanye, and the second gentleman was Dr. Gascogne. Then we came to an agreement to have a meeting in Marihat with Mr. Kiswito, who was the director of the recently established Marihat Research Station. At that time, the Research Institute was the former Afros Research Institute in Medan. But the state-owned companies insisted that they should have their own research station, and that's why they've chosen Marihat as the research station. During the meeting, we came to the conclusion that Marihat really needed support from IRHO to strengthen the research activities. So one of the most important goals was how to invite Dr. Said from Pakistan to introduce Elodiobius cameronicus to Indonesia. We succeeded in inviting him to come to Marihat, and then he stayed there for a couple of months. And then he introduced the insect from African origin, was used for pollination purposes. And in Indonesia, it was really a success story. But not many people knows about this. And then after the IRHO collaboration, there was the assistance from Dr. Donosi de la Motte, who came to here, to Indonesia, to extend services in other fields, namely coconut and other crops. But at one point in time, IRHO was merged into CIRAD, and Dr. Donosi de la Motte became the first president. the collaboration with Indonesia continued, so much so that I got an award, a medal from the French government for the good collaboration with Irasio and CIRAG. Now, looking from this perspective, I thought it would be a good idea if we could inform the students that this collaboration should continue. And that was what Dr. Roda did this morning. Let us continue with the collaboration so that the STIPAN would become one of the most important universities in Indonesia dealing with oil palm. Now, the other point I would like to inform you is that people, big companies now, are realizing that the involvement of young people in research and development is very, very important. That's why Nestle has recently introduced a program where young people are involved in research and development. Nestle thinks that these young people would be able to make innovations relating to health and to the saving of the planet. During this pandemic, people are becoming more and more aware of the importance of keeping your health. And that's why there's now the trend that to reduce the consumption of sugar, of fats, and meat. And you know, tempeh becomes one of the subjects of research now in Zurich. The other point I would like to make is that even Unilever now, since the 1st of September, introduced a new program involving young people. And they are invited to take part in various programs with the purpose of making innovations in the field of food crops. So, ISIPA is obliged, in my view, to follow the steps and make ISIPA by involving young people in research and development a better institute than the other institutes we know in Indonesia. Thank you so much for your attention. And again, thank you so much, Dr. Roda, for the comprehensive presentation, which would benefit and which add knowledge, more knowledge to the participants of this webinar. Thank you so much.
Balik ke aku ya. Thank you very much, Pak Sujai Kartasasmita. It's very other sets of strong messages from yours. Next is we have here Pak Sahat Sinaga. Are you still here, sir, from Apolin, Pak Sahat? With due respect, sir, I would like you to say something, comments, questions, discussions, but please keep in mind you only have 3 minutes. Pak Sahat Sinaga.
Indonesian Palm Oil Board. Jadi bukan dari Apolin, Pak. Well, Mr. Roda, thank you very much for your presentation. Quite a lot of angle we can touch from that. And looks to me, as also for Indonesia, should start thinking from the development business, development economy, should shifting from minerale to biota. biota mean fungus and all the like, including enzyme in algae. So the point you mentioned about palm oil, in Indonesia now for energy and other application non-foods, palm oil is a fossil fuel which contaminated with oxygen and carboxyl. So once you take out the oxygen, meaning that's exactly same as fuel oil, so I agree with you. And that's why in Indonesia now start thinking, is it really all the rest of the years to come focusing on palm oil, or do we have another types of fruit which can produce triglyceride with non-food we can use for foods, we can use for energy. So that's what we are thinking now. Your presentation, quite a lot of range to cover, but I need to see on the point 3, geopolitics, food security, and also number 4, food, fruit, land, and bank. Since our focus of discussion is relating to the smallholders, I think we need to do something for them, yeah. And I suggest 2 things, because if you always dispute and saying other product, like in the old days, USA said that tropical oil poisoning America, and now Europe complaining that the palm oil making deforestation, all the issue they will find out. But we should take that out. So the main concept I suggest, Pak Roda, is coexistence. Because each type of oil has its own function to meet the needs of the world oil, which you see as you're presenting that growth about 3 to 4% per annum. Yeah, that's number 1. And number 2, the world should abandon the barbarian cultivation pattern. That's my saying, barbarian cultivation pattern, meaning not sustainable, and go addressing sustainable or vegetable oils in general. We call it civilized cultivation. Yeah. So if the Europe do not have sustainable vegetable oil production, to us is also barbarian plantation. You know. So let's go to that. And every country producing vegetable oil should follow the rule of sustainability in 2 terms. 1 is the footprint, and 2nd, intensification. So let us globally work together. And Indonesia reducing the green gas house emission, the smallholders plantation about 6.72 million hectares. If we capture that, applying the upcycling economy framework, all the way, we don't put that rotten in a natural area, we process it, it will reduce the emission is about a 40 million ton carbon CO2 equivalent. Now for that, we need financial support and management. Yeah? One is for rejuvenation of the smallholders plantation from small productivity to increase to go to 25 tons FFB per hectare per year. And second, let's not depending on them to the big company. Let's they do themselves. So the waste material valuable we can recycle, upcycling to back to the remediation of the land. And number 3, that financing required to get better. For example, I want to tell you, Pak Roda, I don't believe the current technology in processing palm oil to get for food product. We're wasting so many phytonutrients like carotene, vitamin E total, squalene, which is very, very valuable. Why do we wasting that? So I think the refinery system and the current sterilization system on the plantation, it's a totally not acceptable concept production anymore. So we should protect the valuable. Why the olive oil, they keep the green color? That's the high value materials. Why not in the palm oil? Riching in many nutrients. So that's, since the time is only 3 minutes, I'm very glad to see that your presentation, that the changing of the diet trend from fats, from carbohydrate, shifting slowly to fats and protein. I think that's a good idea for us. This is new to me. Thank you very much. Terima kasih, Pak.
Thank you, Pak Saad. Next, we will have Pak Joko Supriyono. I know him from Gapki. Sorry if I mention your position. Pak Joko, time is yours.
Terima kasih, Pak Agus. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Roda, I'm glad to can hear you again. Since I think it's in the last 3 years you spoke on our event in Bali. So again, thank you. It's very comprehensive views about the palm oil, and I got something news about your perspective. But I just have a curious question, because this is very interesting, but I underline many facts that you arise in your presentation. One is you said that there's palm oil or agriculture in Southeast Asia is more sustainable than in other part of the world, in particular in Europe. The second is you said it's very interesting that this GDP, in terms of GDP, Europe GDP is quite high. On the other hand, this capacity, production capacity is low. Comparing with the Southeast Asia with the low GDP, but the capacity, production capacity is high. This interesting fact, I think. My curious is Europe. Europe is you said is facing the dilemma because there will be deficit in terms of the vegetable oil. And my curious question is, since in the defiscalization, I believe will continue. When the defiscalization will continue, then rapeseed is less competitive. In one hand, in other hand is palm oil is cheaper, and with dairy dilemma, they basically need the palm oil. So my curious question is, what is really bear in mind in EU government bear in mind, and what is the main motive of this? Because you see now, EU is in the situation like this EU Commission, EU government is still and continue to produce any legislation. After RED 1 and then RED 2, and now they prepare for the RED 3. Which is all is to restrict the palm oil trade. On the other hand, also they prepare with the due diligence from farm to fork, and also deforestation legislation. And the newest issue is they also will develop kind of the carbon adjustment mechanism. What's here? This carbon tax, something like that. So why they continue to produce any legislation that restrict the palm oil, while in the other hand they basically is facing a deficit, facing defiscalization, and so on and so on. And this is my curious question. And if you can give the views, and then what's Indonesian palm oil industry should do? Do we need to fight to AU something like that, since there are only consumed is 9% of the production. And what we should do in terms of Indonesia palm oil industry, because as you know, Indonesia government now is in the process of the dispute in the WTO regarding with the RED II legislation, and also Indonesia is in the process of the negotiating Indonesia AU SEPA, which is this lasting almost 3 years, but it's not yet finished. So with this situation, looking at your perspective, what is your opinion about what should Indonesia do facing this situation? Thank you again, Mr. Roda. Terima kasih, Pak Agus.
Terima kasih kembali Pak Joko. Valid questions. To make our time more effective, I would like to continue with other respondents. We have 6 of them. Jadi ada 6 penanggap dan saya minta masing-masing maksimum 2 menit. Jadi kita akan butuhkan waktu 12 menit. Cukup lama bagi Pak Roda untuk mencatatnya. Boleh pakai bahasa Indonesia atau boleh pakai bahasa Inggris. Silakan Pak Dodi Mulyanto from Smart. Pak Dodi, are you still there? Pak Dadi Mulyanto? No.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, Mr. Roda. Yeah, I am very interesting with all of your presentation, and one of the comment is that maybe in the perspective of the palm oil production and the consumption, I think that the India in the Southeast Asia is a big market. That they have a lot of deficit there, but I think that many countries now try to enter the market in the Southeast in the South Asia. So I think if Indonesia go also there will be a red ocean there. So there are many countries that fighting to enter India to solve the deficit of the vegetable oils in India. And in the other hand, in the East Asia country, and then the biggest is China. They also have other than palm oil, vegetable oil, like soybeans and rapeseed. I think that Indonesia should enter the market in the East Asia. So there will be a new ocean in the East Asia, so that we don't have to fight in the country on the region that is difficult to enter. And then also in the term of biodiesel, that Europe have a dilemma there, that they want to use the biodiesel as one of the sustainable for the biofuel, but the rapeseed cannot afford that. Why that we don't collaborate rather than compete? So how about your opinion about that? Thank you, Mr. Roda.
Okay, thank you, Pak Dadi Mulyanto. You are raising issue on transforming the red ocean to blue ocean strategy. It's very good comments. Next, I would like to invite Pak Ali Abdul Wahid from UNY. Are you still here? Just read your questions to make it short. You're not here, so I just want to read your questions. Questions from Pak Ali. As we know, the expansion of palm plantation has become a global phenomenon because palm oil is a sexy commodity. The expansion of palm oil plantation causes deforestation. A way to overcome it is to focus on legal aspects of land tenure. If managed properly, the legality will provide a clear boundaries between parties involved. How to realize the legality? That's the questions. The next question is, currently the world stocks is dominated by information technology companies. And in the next few years, it is predicted that technology will continue to dominate to develop. How about the agricultural industry, particularly palm oil, to struggle and to survive in the era of information technology? That's the questions from Pak Ali. Next, on my list, I have Pak Yohanes Samosir. Are you still here, Pak Samosir? Pak Yohanes Samosir? You are not here. Okay. So the question is, thank you for very interesting presentation. I have two questions. One, if the issue is vegetable oil business war, then do you think other vegetable oil can compete with palm oil? Second, I think you may realize that palm cultivation of palm oil is quite eco-friendly, a part of the issue of land use change. But the issue of land use change should be seen in civilization time perspective. People in the south is left behind in terms of time in opening their land compared to other countries in the north, like Europe and America. Now it's time to south to open their land. Unfortunately, the issue of land use change is heating up. Do you think, Pak Roda, that it is fair to impose very strong restriction on land use change to countries in the south? That's the questions. Next, the fourth response is coming from Pak Reinhardt from Instiper. Are you still here, Pak Reinhardt? No?
Hello?
Okay. Pak Reinhardt has two questions. The first is, when you say that Shirat is trying to find solutions research in tropical countries, is it for trying to find a way to plant more efficient plantation for the northern country? And that's an accusation, actually. The second, as we can see, the increasing consumption of vegetables oil can lead to health concerning issues on such health issues such as obesity, FBC from America. So with that in mind, is it possible that WHO will ban or do some limitation on the use of the vegetable oil for food production in the future? If so, then is the scientist trying to find way to make better or healthy seeds to produce better and healthier oil? That's number 4. Number 5 from Pak Misbakul Fajar from Instiper. Pak Misbakul, are you still here? No? So Pak Misbakul have several questions. The first one is is there any possibility that the international price on palm oil is decreasing? The second, many countries in the northern part put the environmental issues as the limitations for palm oil production. Is it a strategy that belongs to the international trade strategy? How WTO will respond to that? Number 6 from Pak Sebastian Saragi. Are you still here, Pak Sebastian Saragi? No? Okay, there are two issues. The first one is how to finance the sustainability in the tropical countries for the oil palm plantations. The second is how so far the respect in terms of price and other market mechanism to those who are already comply with certification. Is it ISPO can be well compared to RSPO in terms of market response. That's the number 6. I have another additional, not just additional, this is also important, comments from Pak Petrus Gunarso. He will raise his comments directly. Pak Petrus, time is yours. 2 minutes.
Presentation is very insightful, and as you always do, good presentation. I actually missed the part that you presenting in the last part is actually post-COVID, because this is very important for not only for us, but for the whole world, I think. So the issue of logistics now is becoming very, very intense in terms of logistics from our side to the world. The second one is the issue of consumption. What about the consumption post-COVID-19? Not only consumption for the human consumption, but also for the biofuel. Lastly is the demand from China, how that China will consume in the coming years, probably post-COVID, in relation to the use of soybean. Because if their soybean consumption is decreasing, that means that the consumption for our palm oil will be increased. Lastly, one last thing is I'm asking about the post-COVID, what is the situation of the workers in Malaysia? And is there any implication for their production? Because most of the workers are probably affected by the COVID-19. Thank you very much, Ian, Mark. Terima kasih, Pak Agus.
Kembali Pak Petrus. Yeah, another valid comments. Pak Roda, I hope you have taken notes from all of those questions, and it's time for you to interact with those responders. You may wish to classify the issues raised by the responders, and I do hope that you will finish your clarifications within 10 to 15 minutes at the latest. And all of you have other questions, comments, just send it, post it to the chatting room, still available, or just send it to the secretariat, which is the link has been shared to your devices. Pak Roda, please take 10 to 15 minutes.
Thank you so much, Pak Agus. First, I apologize because I just realized that actually probably my last slides, I was seeing them, but you didn't see them. So I apologize for that. Someone should have been knocking me. But anyway, you must have it probably because I sent the slides, so there is probably a way for Pak Agus to send it. And I will answer, and I will finish by that because it's very important. I am classifying it. I try to classify the questions properly. I will try to finish by this COVID issue and post-COVID. Then at that time, maybe I will show the slide again very quickly. So let's do quickly. First, yes, CIRAD, I mean, IRHO has been there a long time ago. We had also the CTFT, the CTFT, former forest center that also became at CIRAD. And the history between CIRAD or the institutes before CIRAD and Indonesia is very long. It's one of our dearest countries. Actually, the story between palm oil and France is longer than that, because the 4 seats that are the grandfather, the grandmothers of the palm oil in Indonesia, that they were in the Bogor Park, they all come from the Botanic Garden in Mauritius and Réunion Island, who was managed by Pierre Poivre, the one who gave the name of pepper in Asia, because he stole them. And he stole the paper. But this is another story. We have a long-standing cooperation between France and Indonesia for this agricultural cooperation, and I am very, very proud to be the youngest one to be at the seat of the regional director and to collaborate with you. For the students, it's very hard, very, very deep to my heart what INSTIPER is doing and what the students. I have been witnessing in my time in first in Africa and then in Malaysia, how it is powerful when we train together young people. You know, we exchange them. They go to this lab. They do their PhD. They exchange they go in Europe or they come back. You know, nowadays we also have young people from Europe coming to do their PhD here or part of their work, and they work together as a team of work, and they exchange ideas. And those young people, when we train them, we are training the hearts and the brains of tomorrow. And those young people, they will tomorrow be the head of the GAPKI, the head of the ministry, the head of all the services in Europe and in Indonesia. If we train them now together, working on the same projects, finding the solutions together, young from Europe or USA and young from Indonesia, Malaysia, and so on, when there will be new problems in 20 years, they will phone to each other. They will say to their minister, stop, I can help you to solve the problem because the director of agriculture is my former mate of PhD. And then they can discuss and they will solve amicably and in a way that is less conflictual. So I think the future, not only of sustainability, but really of how the people will and the nations are going to talk peacefully together is by focusing on the students now, and the way we educate now, and we work, we make them working hands-on on the problems together. And for that, INSTIPER is a fantastic model, and I really will do what we can do to develop with the local universities in the region as well, you know, not only in Indonesia, and also with the other universities in France. Coming back to the straight questions. Fundamentally, I will try to reorder the questions into first at the agricultural level. It's interesting because actually my belief of my understanding is that the debate of the deforestation and of the sustainability, you know, the question of how legally we can solve the issues on the land tenure, or if the ISPO and the RSPO is better. For example, I totally believe that schemes like ISPO and MSPO have a big future. I'm not blaming RSPO as well. RSPO is a private initiative. ISPO and MSPO are a state initiative. And although they might be slower to progress compared to RSPO that could seem more demanding. That's what people say in the press. The quality of the government schemes is they become low. When you have ISPO, it applies to everyone, and it's low. And that's not what can do RSPO. So they are very much complementing. I don't see at all a competition. I see that ISPO is doing something that RSPO cannot do. And RSPO is answering a legitimate vision of the business. And ISPO is also being the implementation, the government implementation. And without ISPO, you cannot do. You know, RSPO could only do a part of the market, so ISPO is doing the rest. So I'm sure the two must be concomitant, actually. And maybe it's good that they challenge each other because that's the way to progress. But coming back to these issues of deforestation and so on, I think these issues are a bit issues of the past. We need still work to demonstrate the trends, to have reliable scientific measures of what is deforestation and so on, to be able to link the deforestation to the real cause, because sometimes, you know, you have deforestation there, but the deforestation is not for palm oil, it's for something else. Sometimes also those complex realities must be addressed correctly by science. And today is not yet at the level. There is progress to do that. What is Tipper is developing with the drones and so on could be one of the way to do this, to solve this issue in the future. So it's linking to the question at the end that was asking me about, you know, where did I write it? The information technologies and so on. I completely believe that the sustainable management of the landscape will not go without the improvement of those technologies. Drones, code bars, you know, identification of which this product is coming from, because these IT products, they not only help to see the landscape, but they also help the farmers to get a better share for the product, for the work. And we saw that in Indonesia together with some other colleagues in the timber industry many years ago. We could demonstrate that this farmer or this producer produced this, and we could link all the work of every worker to the final product. The problem was not there. It was addressing the final market, because the big corporation that were selling those products, sometimes, I mean, not in Indonesia, but in the farmer markets, we are not happy that if you give too much power to the farmers, they can renegotiate it. So your price is going to be higher. So it shows us that the IT are a way to give more power to the farmers, but not everyone will be happy. At the end, the consumer will have to pay a little bit more if you want, because if you have, you know, a rebalance of who gets what, you have always a struggle between who gets the best margin. So this is something that will not be solved in the future, but that will re-engage new kind of discussion. Which brings us to the next point. Everyone has been speaking about oleochemistry, and I think we all agree that in all the questions, I hope I'm not doing too fast shortcuts, but yes. Before oleochemistry, I should answer the question of the food. The main use of the palm oil or the vegetable oils is the brut, you know, the raw use is the oil, and the oil goes in the food. That will continue. That will there will be no way to erase it, and the challenge will be not only how to do sustainable palm oil in Malaysia, Indonesia, but it will be how to do sustainable palm oil outside Indonesia. Challenge will it be with the know-how of Indonesians, or will it be with the know-how of other people? We in CIRAD, and I am answering another question, our mission is to work for the tropical countries, for the benefit of the tropical societies. We are not there to grow crops in northern countries. That's not our job. You have other institutes who are doing that. Our sole job is to help to diminish the hunger, the environmental questions by research and by training of the people for the research. And we do that in a collaborative way. And what I see from that, my experience from Africa, is telling you that there is a trend where more and more South countries are cooperating with South countries. So instead of being still looking at the antagonism between Indonesia and Europe, you know, market antagonism, I think straight away Indonesia has to be looking at the other countries, because some others are doing it already. Brazilians are already doing that. And they're already in Africa, and I'm sure Indonesia in some way, some companies of Indonesia are doing it. And it will be much more fruitful in the future than keeping the conflict, you know, trying to unlock Europe, because there is no way Indonesia can really unlock Europe, because EU, they have their own agricultural industry, and it's legitimate from EU that they try to save their agricultural industry. And it's not even a question of biodiesel tax or fiscalization, because if EU want really to subsidy their agricultural industry, they can do it directly at the end. So and no one can forbid that to do, and it's their right to do it. So you will have that difficult condition. EU will always be tempted to favor its own agriculture, and that's why trying to fight that is not a fight that can be won. While what can be done is playing on where Indonesia can be stronger than it is now. And today, Indonesia is strong on the price, but is not yet very strong on the added values. And we come to the oleochemistry, because oleochemistry helps the food, but it helps also all the rest of the industries. We can foresee that the fossil fuel or the fossil oil industry is a sunset industry. It will stay for another few decades, but there is a growth, intrinsic growth of the renewable oleochemistry. And in that growth, if Indonesia doesn't take its market share now, it will miss the train, because some others are going to grab it very quickly. So that's a big challenge to grab now. And this competition is probably the most intense competition in the coming years and probably months. This is where also CIRAD and STIPER can work hard, because it's totally correlated with the agriculture. You know, in the past, people were seeing different sectors, agriculture and industry, but we know that it's totally linked. And particularly, one of the gentlemen was discussing about the issues of the refinery process that is not ideally managed today in terms of losing carotenes and so on. This is where the research can go, because it's totally linked with the variety, the differences from the ground that are coming from different farmers and so on, and the organization, the logistic of the farmers themselves. All of this can help to win money, to save cost, and then to make the industry working at a different level than just the head-on competition on cost, but improving their way to create more pathways for their oleochemistry. So this is very exciting so far, because all your questions were extremely pertinent. I would spend hours, and I have to keep to the 10 to 15 minutes. So I have to jump to the. I will come back to the competition, but I have to jump from the oleochemistry to the next high-tech stuff, which is the price, you know, and then the healthy. Fundamentally, the techniques to have healthy palm oil are none. So the future won't be into the health. It will be probably in better communication, in better demonstration, because you will still have some NGOs that will try to say that palm oil is not good and so on. But on the paper, the science is clear. It's not the case. There is no good oil, no bad oil. Every oil has its own use. So the real future there is more into the capacity of making good communication, making good dissemination, making good demonstration. And that's at the level of the students. of all the students, even the Western students. When they come there, you teach them that, they come back, and when they will be leaders of their own industry, they will repeat the information. So it's a long-term investment, actually. That health issue is it is on par with the training. And the added value, I spoke about the added value. The added value to me is the key to finance the sustainability. Sustainability, it costs more. There is no way around that. To be more sustainable is usually more costly. It can be done with smart ways, which are not too costly. But to afford real sustainability, you need to generate more GDP. The way to generate more GDP is to go higher on the value added. And that's the good way, because when you have many ways. You have the government that can help, but the companies themselves, they can improve themselves. And the farmers and the producers themselves, once they get more added value from their own products, they can develop themselves. I believe very much, with the help of the IT, into the solutions that emerge from the ground. We all know that when you have a generic solution implemented by the state, usually it has some difficulties to adapt to the all fine differences on the different grounds. You know, one kampong here has a different soil than another kampong in a different island, and all of these have their own way to do it. So it's very interesting also to let the possibilities through the added value and the redistribution to the value to let the solutions to emerge from the ground. So there is a need for organizations, and Pakagus can tell a lot of things about that with his own experience on those kind of organizations that can help to let solutions emerging from the ground. So that will be the next factor for financing the sustainability. And finally, the time is fast. Try to go on the issue of logistics and post-COVID. We have the logistics of the foods, the oil, and the molecules. The frontier, to me, is on the molecules. What the post-COVID just demonstrated the COVID demonstrated to everyone is some industries can stop when there is a crisis. Some other industries need to continue. And those who need to continue are the industries that are feeding the people and the industries that are feeding the machines or the products. And we saw with the slides of Europe, if I can share my screen, I will share you what you couldn't see. Yes, we saw with that, all the produce were going down in Europe during the COVID, and Europe was stopped during the COVID, except the food and drink, and that was close to zero or a little bit above, and the chemicals. That means that the food didn't stop. Palm oil was, that is the explanation why Europe didn't stop to import palm oil during the COVID crisis, because they need palm oil for their molecules in the industry, in the food industry. And they need palm oil for their molecules when they do polystyrene, styrofoam, and other oleochemistry or perfumes. So this is the example of this kind of industry will never stop. Palm oil is blessed because it is in such a critical sector of the human life. You know, the industry, it feeds the machines and it feeds the people, if I can say so. So the key is that EU, the Asian was able to adapt very quickly. And that is because the SMEs of Asian are extremely flexible, nimble. And the future of the COVID, the post-COVID actually, is that there will be more and more competition at the world level between the systems of SMEs. Indonesia has an ecosystem, Malaysia has another one, Indonesia has another one. All Southeast Asia has an ecosystem of SMEs, but this ecosystem is in competition with the Chinese ecosystem of SMEs, and it is in competition with the African system of ecosystem of SMEs, and it is in competition with the American ecosystem of SMEs. So this is now this is the slide that you missed, but I'm going stop share. What I'm saying there is the real issue is beyond purely palm oil. It's an organization issue between the SMEs of Indonesia of different sectors, and if they are want to keep their competitiveness, to improve it, and second, to become an international player and to become a player in the other continent, that's the key of the competitiveness of the palm oil sector of tomorrow. It lies also in the capacity of the SMEs to work together with the big corporation and to be the flexible component that give that engine to the economy to evolve very quickly. It is a very dense summary of all your questions. I didn't touch all the details, but I hope, Pak Agus, you pardon me. I try to keep in the time and I think I am already I went too much beyond the time.
Thank you very much, Pak Roda, for the clear clarification. We are approaching the end of this session, but I have a very important message from Pak Tupito Simamora, the chairperson for CPOC. If you can say your message in just 1 minute, Pak Simamora, then time is yours, please. Pak Simamora is not there, so I will send the written comments from Pak Simamora directly to Pak Roda. Ladies and gentlemen, we are coming to the end of the sessions. As the conclusion, I have two big conclusions. One is we realize that in terms of palm oil industry, Indonesia is a big international player. So keep playing with that through all the dynamics of diplomacy and negotiations in the global level. But it does mean also that we give ourselves a bigger work to do, more homework to be completed. As Pak Roda says earlier, that it is now depending on Indonesian intersectoral decision makers and players on how to make Indonesia a single incorporation of oil palm. That's the first thing. The second is the pandemic COVID opened up a new action space for global politics in palm oil, particularly in terms of trading and market. The action space are there, but with significant, we cannot neglect it also the limiting, the constraining factors that we need to resolve. With that, then we can still develop our palm oil industry, as Pak Roda said also earlier, because oil palm industry is right in the middle of the livelihood circle of the global people. That's the two conclusions I made. Ladies and gentlemen, the presentation of Pak Roda is available, but I might remind you that to quote this session and also the materials, please ask the presenter, please ask the Pak Roda for quoting a part of the whole things. The second is that I would also remind you that this session is completely academic. It's scientific, so it doesn't have any relations with any political interests. So please keep in mind that all are based on the facts, on the evidence. With that, then I conclude this session with many thanks, particularly from those very honorable people, Pak Sujai Kartasasmita, Pak Saad Sinaga from Dewan Minyak Sawit Indonesia, Pak Joko Supriyono from KAPKI, Pak Dupito Simamura from CPOC, Pak Petrus Gunarso from many heads he wear. Also we have Pak Aziz, the actor, the main actor of ISPO, at least till last year. And many thanks also to all of you who are loyal to us. At the first time, this session was registered by more than 800 participants, and only half of them, around 370, following this Zoom meeting platform. The others are using the online YouTube. And at the end of the session, we still have 230 participants still active in this. Well, that's amazing. We are proud of this, and this is also success to Pak Sumakroda. Thank you very much again. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning. We still have your camera open to give an opportunity for our secretariat to take photo. So open up the camera for about 1 or 2 minutes, and we will have your session, your photo in session in this Zoom meeting. Sudah? Okay, see you in the next serial of the same agenda on Studium Generale. Bye-bye.
Di kata saya langsung berpikir, the future start now. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat datang di kampus Institut Pertanian Stiper Yogyakarta. Yuk kita lihat fasilitas yang ada. Untuk mencari referensi, saya selalu datang ke perpustakaan ini. Nah, sekarang kita sedang berada di ruang kuliah online nih. Yuk. Yuk, kita lihat kegiatan mahasiswa yang sedang praktikum. Sekarang kami sedang berada di kebun praktik milik Insiper yang berada di Ungaran, Jawa Tengah. Yuk, kita ikutin lainnya. Sebagai mahasiswa harus selalu menjaga kebugaran. Dalam tubuh yang sehat terdapat jiwa yang kuat. Di Insiper Yogyakarta juga banyak beasiswanya loh. Untuk info lebih lanjut bisa klik website Insiper Jogja.